on an all-new Buffy. Someone's playing a very deadly game.
It could be anyone. This to me says demon.
I can't go out there.
You can't stop it.
We will find this murderer.
You can't kill it.
There's something there.
Because it's not even alive. An all-new Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadows. If I fail, if I succeed.
Thank you,
at least-
Cordelia.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Season 1, Episode 9 Puppet Show, written by Dean Batali and Robert Des Hotel, who previously wrote Season 1, Episode 5 Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, and directed by Ellen Pressman, functions off of the uncanny valley creepiness of dolls to scare us with a living puppet story. It is possibly written in homage to Child's Play or Poltergeist, but fear of dolls and dummies is common, and it could easily be a standalone work of horror. It begins with talent show auditions at Sunnydale High. The new mean, child-hating school principal, Principal Snyder, played by Armin Shimmerman, best known for his role as Quark in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, forces Giles to run the talent show, which he soon finds out has no real talent to boast. The magic guy loses his rabbit, Cordelia can't sing worth a darn, and Morgan is a terrible ventriloquist. Not to mention the creepy POV shots of a demon hunting the contestants. Buffy and friends mock Giles, but Snyder catches them and forces them to participate in the talent show. Puppet Show is interesting for having a party atmosphere like some horror films do, when they know that their audiences are fans wanting a fun experience. It's a twisty episode like Season 1, Episode 3 Witch, but it's less singularly focused and has a number of entertaining elements. Snyder is put forward as an obviously evil character. There's a creepy dummy. Some other dangers will become apparent later in the episode. And it's all set around this chaotic talent show where students constantly fail at their talents. After having straightforward horror and or camp for most of the season, Puppet Show is a chance to relax tensions and truly enjoy the experience of watching horror, with scares and humor in equal amounts. In this way, Puppet Show feels to me like more of a creative descendant of John Landis than the show's actual homage to American Werewolf in London, Season 2, Episode 15 Phases, also by the same writing team.
So let me hold you tight and share them together.
The Scoobies watch Morgan painfully attempt to make his dummy Sid talk. Buffy gets creeped out by the doll. There is some speculation that this is her Slayer senses picking up magic, but I don't think there's any need for that. She can just be a girl creeped out by a doll.
It's creepy.
Suddenly, Morgan seems like an amazing ventriloquist when Sid starts talking in his own voice and berates Morgan for being bad at this. Yeah, I try to preserve the twist to some extent, but I'm not going to pretend that this is a stage act. Everyone knows that Sid is possessed, just like everyone knows going in that Miss French is a she-mantis. It's Sid. Sid.
Sid the wily dairy gnome?
Sid is a pervert who catcalls Willow and Buffy. Both Xander and Buffy object to this, thinking that Morgan's behind it. Though I question Xander's intentions, as he may be more possessive than wanting to support the girl's dignities, this at least represents a small step up from his awful actions in Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. Buffy takes the initiative and threatens to burn Sid if Morgan continues to harass her through the dummy. Though Morgan and Sid are both taken aback, we are on Buffy's side, similar to her self-defense actions against Andy for groping her in the movie, which ultimately makes the scene feminist. An unseen villain kills one of the competitors, Emily, in the locker room. When they find out about it, the Scoobies express genuine horror that adds an intimate human quality to the tragic events of Sunnydale that is more absent in later seasons when everyone just gets used to constant killing. Giles reports that her heart was removed, and while some demons eat hearts, the fact that the killer used a knife makes him suspect a human culprit. Buffy thinks that the proximity to the Hellmouth makes it clear that they're dealing with a demon, which is a little naive considering that she has faced human villains before, and will again shortly. Giles hopes that it is a demon because it's easier to think about innately evil demons killing people than humans driven to kill, which sets up themes that will be discussed more in Season 2, Episode 7, Lie to Me. It is true that human killers with no connection to the supernatural are few and far between, with one of the most prominent examples being the evil lunch lady from Season 3, Episode 18, Earshot. At the same time, Snyder is going around being obviously evil. Interestingly, he seems aware of a lot of the goings-ons in Sunnydale that you would think would be hushed up, like his predecessor being eaten alive. He doesn't associate these events with magic, at least outwardly, just stereotypes about delinquent students. He identifies Buffy, Willow, and Xander as delinquents, and tells Giles that he plans to keep an eye on them. If you want to consider the possibility of a human killer instead of Sid, Snyder is an obvious suspect, but he also works as a minor villain in a story about teens dealing with problems. Sometimes authority figures put in charge of teens are awful people, and the teens just have to deal with them. Flutie was an exaggerated version of a well-meaning school principal not sure how to lead, and Snyder is an exaggerated version of a mean school principal who only thinks he knows how to lead.
Kids. I don't like them.
Scooby's leading an investigation into Emily's death, interrogating the other students. All of the evidence seems to point to Morgan and Sid. People think that Morgan is crazy because he constantly rubs his head, acts paranoid, and talks to his dummy like it's alive. Buffy walks in on Morgan and Sid having an ominous conversation. Buffy questions Morgan. He tries to throw off her suspicions, but then he holds his head in pain, and Sid tells Buffy to go away. Morgan packs up Sid and hints to her that Sid is alive.
Cute couple.
There are multiple jokes in the episode suggesting that Morgan and Sid are a gay couple. These follow the sissy line and never kill a boy on the first date, and being homophobic moments in the show. Dean Batali and Robert Des Hotel seem less than concerned over alienating the gay fan base. The show has quite a while to go before it becomes the groundbreaking example of gay representation as the show is known for. The Scoobies discuss. They all think that Morgan is the killer, but Giles warns them not to act too hastily and suggests that Buffy snoop through his locker. Willow hacks the school server to find his locker number, showing her strength once again, and Buffy goes there after school. Snyder confronts her and hints that he might be a sociopath. Buffy says that Morgan sent her to pick up Sid, but she opens the case to find Sid gone. She goes home empty-handed. This is scary, but less scary when you find out that Morgan took Sid, yeah. Morgan and Sid observe her. Sid ominously says that Buffy is the one. Just one more, and he'll be free. Morgan refuses to kill her, so Sid says he will instead. He sneaks into her bedroom while she sleeps, tries to kill her, but wakes her up and she knocks him away. She screams, Joyce comes in, and he makes an exit. She thinks she was dreaming until she sees the open window. It's nicely creepy, with the calling for mom evocative of childhood nightmares in a way similar as the gentleman from Season 4, Episode 10, Hush. Though essentially a horny man, Sid's fundamentally inhuman nature makes him more of an abstract villain, especially now when we don't know where his mind came from, so his intrusion into Buffy's bedroom has less of a sexual connotation than Angel's vamping out in Season 1, Episode 7, Angel. Sid is just a creepy monster. Emphasis on the monster.
He's a doll, for God's sake.
With Snyder watching them, Giles thinks that they need to continue the school talent show, so he suffers through it. After Cordelia annoys him by complaining, he employs a trick that Xander taught him, to stare at her hair and just bring it to her attention so that she thinks that she has a bad hair day and runs to the bathroom to fix it. Feminists often hate this joke. It delegitimizes a girl's struggle with her self-esteem, painting it as vain, and it legitimizes more of Xander's nastiness in having the father figure go along with causing her psychological distress just to get rid of her because she was being annoying. While there is a point to this criticism, I find it overblown and nitpicky, likely based on the assumption that Joss is an evil misogynist. Xander is way worse back in Never Kill a Boy on the First Date, and this is really tame in comparison. Cordelia is also a bully, who harassed Willow pretty badly in Season 1, Episode 1, Welcome to the Hellmouth, a fact that feminists often forget when seizing the opportunity to take a shot at Xander. The original pilot emphasizes this, with Xander antagonizing her directly after she bullies Willow.
Willow, nice dress. Good to know you've seen the softer side of Sears. Grunge, wow, what a new look. I know flannel is so over, but I can never tell what's coming next.
I don't know about you, but I'm scared.
Excuse me, was I talking to you? Has any girl ever spoken to you of her own free will?
We aren't led to sympathize with her until Season 1, Episode 11, Out of Mind, Out of Sight, as a twist. And even then, we're not allowed to forget that she's still mean. It's always bad to cause people distress, and there is a point to criticize Giles for it, but unless you can criticize Buffy for physically hurting Larry in response to his violence against Xander in Season 2 Episode 7 Halloween, and for his sexual harassment of her at the beginning of Phases, because he's later humanized and given a sympathetic reason for being a bully at the end of Phases, I'm inclined to think that this is just nitpicking, overblown by anti-male bias. Anyway, Buffy tells the gang that Sid attacked her. Given that she was sleeping and didn't get a good look, they're inclined to think that she just had a nightmare coinciding with a visit from a stray cat. I don't like them doubting her when she's the leader. But they immediately accept that a demon sealed into a book entered the internet when scanned and romanced Willow, but a possessed dummy is just too weird for them? Really?
I cannot believe that you, of all people, are trying to scully me.
As a narrative, it functions in a similar manner as the main thrust of the X-Files, where we're on Mulder's side as his colleagues doubt him, as opposed to the episodes where we're on Scully's side and wanting more information before believing Mulder's wild theories that are probably wrong, as did happen sometimes. We don't really believe that it could be a cat, so it's not a case of the show being sexist for painting Buffy as hysterical. It's just annoying that her friends doubt her judgment. She was right about Miss French being a praying mantis from turning her head, for goodness sakes. Giles suggests a demon culprit, one of 7 associated demons who each consumes a human heart and brain every 7 years to maintain a human disguise. Willow suggests that Morgan is the demon, but Giles doesn't think so because these demons are super strong, while Morgan is weakening. The signs seem to point to Sid being the demon and somehow draining Morgan's strength. Morgan is distracted in class. When the teacher calls on him, Sid answers. Despite his protest, she takes away the puppet. After class, he comes to pick him up, but Sid is gone. Gone? Because Xander stole him, to prove to Buffy that he's not alive. Sid doesn't animate for him, and the others besides Buffy are convinced. Again, why are they scullying her? Are you honestly saying that Giles can't do some magic test on the dummy? Buffy goes looking for Morgan and she encounters Snyder again. Snyder questions if Buffy as a girl will be safe walking around on her own, and it totally sounds like a threat, but it also alludes to the idea that girls are weak. Buffy asserts that she's fine, and Snyder accepts that and leaves. In both standing up to the threatening guy and standing up to the sexist guy, it functions as a feminist moment with a proud female hero. Willow reads about dolls sometimes becoming alive and killing people in order to take their organs so that it can pretend to be human. Giles realizes that this fits the scenario just about the time that Xander realizes that Sid came to life and left on his own. So now they believe Buffy. As it will turn out though, this idea will be wrong. They don't have the information needed to understand what's going on. So they're wrong in not trusting Buffy and wrong for believing her. They should just trust her. This isn't like in Season 4, Episode 2, Living Conditions, when they have reason to think that Buffy is magically irrational and don't listen to her. This is just them being randomly stupid because ignoring Buffy helped the plot. To skip ahead a bit, I've heard feminists call Living Conditions sexist because they didn't see how ignoring Buffy makes sense with what the characters know. This is not accurate because Living Conditions does offer an explanation, but even in the case of Puppet Show when it doesn't make any sense, it's not sexist, it's just bad writing.
Who writes this stuff?
Buffy continues looking for Morgan, and she comes across his dead body with the brain removed. This is fairly shocking because even though we've somewhat suspected Morgan of misdeeds, he's come across as likable and just in over his head. If Emily was a woman in a refrigerator for the Monster of the Week, Morgan is just as much a man in the refrigerator to motivate Buffy to kill the Monster of the Week. And yet Joss is thought of as a misogynist who delights in killing female characters? It really doesn't make sense unless you go in with an anti-male bias. Sid attacks her and drops a chandelier to pin her. They fight, and Buffy ends up getting the upper hand. Buffy and Sid trade dramatic lines. Buffy is the victorious hero, and Sid is the defeated hero. They then realize that each of them misunderstood the situation, and both think that they're heroes fighting the organ-eating demon. Buffy takes Sid to the library and lets him share his story. Sid is a demon hunter. He was originally human, but went after the organ-eating demons, and one of them cursed him to possess a ventriloquist dummy. Now he is on a mission to kill all 7 in order for his soul to leave the puppet and go on to the next place. Though only in the puppet's backstory, this is the first confirmation of a human demon hunter. Angel was presented like he could have been one of them, but this perception was short-lived. I don't believe we encounter a human one until Cain in Phases. Sid explains that he thought Buffy was the last demon because of her strength. He thinks that the demon has to be a member of the talent show, though to the viewer, Snyder is the most obvious candidate. He's just so overtly evil. Sid has the idea that Giles can gather all the contestants together for a motivation exercise, and Sid and Buffy will be able to see who isn't present. Sid mentions his having sex with a hot Korean slayer in the 30s. It's notable in that she is only sexualized through Sid, who Buffy views as disgusting, so it avoids the Asian sexualization seen in the movie script. There's only a nod to female power in different circumstances, and bringing up themes of Slayer mortality, which will be dealt with more overtly in the following episode and in the season finale. Sid hits on Buffy, but Buffy is grossed out, and we're on her side in rejecting him. She'll work with him, but she doesn't like him. Giles does the motivation exercise, but no one is missing. Sid mysteriously vanishes, and Giles finds Snyder snooping around. Then Buffy finds a brain. Xander thinks Sid is the culprit, but Buffy believes his story and, for whatever reason, that counts for something at this point. She wonders why the demon rejected the brain when Morgan was the smartest one in school. Willow hacks and learns that Morgan had brain cancer, so his brain was no good. Logically, the demon would go after the next smartest one, which they think is Willow. Of course, they forget faculty, and it turns out that Giles is smarter. So, Giles is in trouble.
Must be Tuesday.
The demon turns out to be that crappy magician, and he tricks Giles into getting locked into a guillotine. When criticizing the show, feminists often bring up how Willow is often put in trouble, and that's true, but it's also true that Giles often gets in trouble. Both of them share the characteristic of being smart and not very physically capable, as well as being cute in a wimpy sort of way, so they get endangered a lot. They both grow out of this, and then later new wimpy characters like Wesley and Dawn are introduced. Buffy arrives fast enough to save Giles. There's a big fight scene. She mostly kills the magician, and then Sid finishes him off. Sid dies, and his body becomes just a puppet. Then the curtains rise, and Snyder is completely baffled over what he's looking at. So it turns out he's not the demon after all. He's just a really mean school principal. And then there's a scene during the credits of the kids trying to perform a scene from Oedipus, but doing terribly. Willow can't take the pressure and runs off stage, in foreshadowing to the following episode. And so concludes Puppet Show. It's not the best episode, and it's very forgettable, but it's fun, and a marked improvement over Season 1, Episode 8, I, Robot You, Jane. Willow is back to her standard level of competence. Giles gets a turn as the one in danger. And Xander is far less problematic. There are issues, like any episode, but it's pretty decent. My only real complaint isn't of a feminist nature, it's the way Sid dying is portrayed as good, and that's a general problem about Joss Whedon's perspective on death, not limited to this episode. All in all, Puppet Show is pretty harmless.
Grr, arg.